If this is your first time here, you don't need to do anything special. Just settle in. These stories aren't meant to be rushed through. They're meant to be sat with, the way you sit with a thought that won't leave you alone late at night. The kind of thought that doesn't shout, but also doesn't let you sleep. What I'm about to share didn't arrive with alarms or raised voices. There was no dramatic phone call, no moment where everything shattered at once. It arrived quietly, disguised as an ordinary evening, the kind you forget before it's even over. I used to believe the biggest changes in life announce themselves clearly. I don't believe that anymore. That day had been forgettable in the purest sense. Work blurred together the way it always did. Emails, small talk, the soft hum of office lights. By the time I drove home, the sun was already lowering itself behind the buildings, not in a dramatic way, just enough to tint everything gold for a few minutes before disappearing. I went for a run, like I usually did when my head felt too full. Same route, same cracked sidewalks, same quiet neighborhood streets. My breathing found its rhythm, my thoughts loosening with every block. There's something about repetitive motion that makes honesty easier. Things you've been avoiding start to drift closer. By the time I got back, my shirt was heavy with sweat, my legs buzzing in that dull, satisfied way. All I could think about was the shower, hot water, steam, silence. The house was unusually quiet when I walked in, not the calm, peaceful kind, the kind that feels unfinished, like a sentence that stops halfway through. I stood by the door for a second longer than I needed to, listening. Nothing. No voices. No TV. No footsteps overhead. I lived with Marcus and Elena then, not family by blood, but close enough that the lines blurred. We'd all moved in together a few years earlier, after Marcus lost his wife suddenly. It wasn't a planned arrangement. It was grief solving practical problems. Extra rooms, shared bills, quiet understanding. The house had changed after that. We all had. Conversations grew shorter. Laughter became something that happened accidentally instead of naturally. No one ever said it out loud, but we were careful with each other, like everything was fragile, and we didn't trust ourselves not to break it further. That night, I didn't think about any of that. I dropped my shoes by the door, left my running clothes in a heap on the floor, and went straight to the bathroom. The water took its time warming up. When it finally did, I stood there longer than usual, letting the steam cloud the mirror, letting my shoulders drop. The sound of the water filled the room completely. It erased everything else. For a few minutes, it felt like I didn't exist anywhere else. I don't know how long I was in there. Long enough to forget the house. Long enough to believe I was alone. When I stepped out, towel wrapped around my waist, the air felt cooler against my skin. I remember thinking I should have turned the heat up. I padded down the hallway without looking up, already planning what I'd make for dinner. And then I saw them. Marcus and Elena were sitting on the couch, not talking, just sitting, looking directly at me. Time did something strange in that moment. It didn't stop exactly. It stretched. My body reacted before my mind did. My chest tightened. Heat rushed to my face. I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the towel. It wasn't embarrassment in the way people joke about. It was the shock of being seen when you weren't ready, when all your defenses were down, when you thought you were invisible for a second longer. I muttered something. I don't remember what. An apology, maybe. Or a joke that didn't land. I turned too quickly, nearly tripping over my own feet, and went back down the hall. In my room, I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing harder than I should have been. My heart felt like it was trying to outrun the moment. I told myself it was nothing. People see each other accidentally all the time. It didn't mean anything. It shouldn't mean anything. Still, I stood there longer than necessary, listening to the muffled sounds of the house, waiting for the feeling to pass. It didn't. Over the next few days, nothing obvious happened. No one brought it up. No awkward jokes. No apologies. On the surface, everything looked the same. But there are changes you feel more than you see. Elena paused slightly before speaking to me, like she was choosing her words more carefully. Marcus seemed more tired than usual. his eyes lingering in thought even when we were talking about nothing important. Dinners were quieter, not silent, just restrained. I started replaying the moment in my head, not because of what happened, but because of how it made me feel, vulnerable, unprepared. Reminded of how thin the walls between us really were. One night, a few days later, I was in my room with the lights dimmed, headphones on, trying to lose myself in a game. It was easier to focus on a world with clear objectives, clear rules. I didn't hear the door open at first. Elena leaned against the frame, smiling the same familiar smile she always used when she teased me about gaming too much. She made a comment about the screen, asked what I was playing, laughed when I explained it poorly. On paper, it was a normal interaction, completely harmless. But something underneath it felt off, not dangerous, not inappropriate, just careful. We were both aware of the space between us in a way we hadn't been before. Words felt measured. Pauses stretched slightly longer than necessary. It was as if we were both trying not to step on something invisible. After she left, I sat there staring at the pause screen, controller resting in my hands, thinking about how strange it is when familiarity shifts without warning. You don't notice it happening. You just wake up one day and realize something that used to feel effortless now requires attention. The house carried that feeling for weeks. Nothing exploded. No confrontations. Just small adjustments. We each retreated into our own corners a little more. I stayed out later. Elena spent more time in her room. Marcus filled the silence with television noise that no one was really watching. One evening, after dinner, Marcus asked if I could sit with him for a minute. His voice wasn't stern. It wasn't upset. It was tired. The kind of tired that settles into someone after years of holding things in. We sat in the den with the lights low. He didn't mention the incident. Not directly. Instead, he talked about his wife. About how quiet the house felt after she was gone. About how silence had started to feel safer than saying the wrong thing. He admitted he didn't always know how to hold space for other people's discomfort when he barely understood his own. Listening to him, something inside me softened. That moment in the hallway hadn't created the tension. It had just revealed it. It had shined a light on all the things we'd been carefully stepping around for years. We weren't uncomfortable with each other. We were uncomfortable with everything we hadn't said. After that conversation, things didn't magically fix themselves. Healing rarely works that way, but something shifted. We talked more, not about the incident, about life, about stress, about small, ordinary things that felt heavier when left unspoken. The house slowly found its rhythm again. Laughter returned, not forced, but tentative at first, like a muscle remembering how to move. I realized then that some moments aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be understood. That night taught me that discomfort isn't always something to escape. Sometimes it's an invitation, a quiet one, to pay attention, to listen, to finally say the things that have been sitting between us all along. And maybe that's the part that stays with me the most, not the moment itself, but what it uncovered when we finally stopped pretending everything was fine.